Hi, Sin. Hi,
Hey,
Joe.
Lorna. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Perfect.
Let me just.
Can I do a quick share screen to see if it works?
Sure.
Are you seeing that?
Yes.
Perfect. Okay.
All right. I am going to share my screen for a second while I take care of something. And it would be right back. Hi, everyone. Welcome.
Hello.
Hi.
Okay, it's 12 noon. I want to thank everyone for attending our missing persons session. I know it's lunchtime, so I can't express how grateful I am that people are attending and getting ready to interact with our amazingly awesome panelists. Justine and Nadine, do you want to go first?
Yeah, sure.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
So is everything fine? We all see my presentation? Okay.
Perfect.
Okay, great. Hello, so my name is Justine Collin-Santerre, and I'm a PhD student at Université de Montréal. I will present a research project which also consists in part of my thesis project. So let's dig into it. In 2019, 32,759 adults and 4,425 children were reported missing to the Canadian authorities. 9,000 of those cases were only for the province of Quebec. Police forces are faced with cases to investigate with almost no help when it comes to the prioritization of these cases in a systematic way. This study tries to bridge this gap by providing a better overview of missing person cases, while allowing to better pinpoint case characteristics that could be used to help prioritization practices. This study is part of a larger ongoing project collecting information on all cases of missing persons in Canada throughout 2005 to 2019. Missing person cases were identified through online news. There is a total of 7,066 cases that have been identified and collected. To date, there are 187 coded cases in the database. Using latent class analysis, this study uses these identified missing person cases and aims to, firstly, describe profiles at stake and their prevalence, and secondly, to identify individual, contextual, and case characteristics for missing person cases and profiles. Shortly, latent class analysis allows to represent a phenomenon using a model with distinct subgroups. Everyone in an identified subgroup shares common characteristics. It also allows to identify underlying trends and thus to demonstrate the heterogeneity of the analyzed phenomenon. 8 variables relating to the characteristics of the victims, their behavior, as well as the contextual information of the disappearance were used to create the typology. It is possible to note in the analyzed sample that the majority are adult men not having a problem of substance dependence, whether it's alcohol, drugs, or medication. These individuals do not consume drugs, are known to the police, and do not have a criminal record. The majority were last seen in a commercial or public place, such as bars, grocery stores, and gas stations, or also in a residential place, such as apartments and houses. Once these 8 variables were identified, it was possible to run the analysis and to be able to identify the model which is the most representative of the studied sample. The 6 classes of missing persons typology will be presented, starting with the most important class of people, that is the one that contains the most cases, to the least important, therefore the class that includes the fewest cases, from missing adult men to missing adult women. Among those six classes, missing men were present for 2 of those classes. Before continuing, simply observe the column entitled items. The response for which the prevalence is noted in this table is the one just beneath the item's name. For example, for the class of missing men identified as no history, 87% are men, 77% are adults, and none has mental health problems, since the answer to this item, psychological disorder, is yes. So for the missing men class is divided into 2 subcategories. The first category is called no history and includes adult men who have no psychological, addiction, and drug use disorder. Most individuals in this class are not known to the police and none have a criminal record. Finally, most missing men in this category have disappeared from a commercial or public place. The second subcategory is adult men who are marginalized and criminalized. All the individuals in this class have psychological problems and are known to the police. Also, most of these men have addiction disorders, have a known drug use, and 60% have a criminal record. They either disappeared from a residential place or from a commercial and public place. The second class of this typology is missing minors and is the second most prevalent class. This class is also divided into 2 subcategories. The first subcategory is repeated runaways. Most individuals in this class are underage young women who do not present any psychological disorder, drug use, or addiction. However, they are all known to the police. They were last seen in a residential location or went missing from a supervised government institution. The second subcategory is minors who have no history of running away or any problem. These individuals were last seen in a residential or commercial and public place. The third class includes individuals who are in custody in a government facility. 62% of these missing individuals within this category are reported missing from a government institution while being taken care of at that same institution. I will refer to this class as missing from SGI. It is possible to see that, yes, for the most part, it is the seniors who fall into this category. However, minors are also present for notable prevalence in this class. So, all the individuals are men and all have psychological disorders in addition to being all known to the police. However, very few of them have criminal records or drug use, and none of them have a substance addiction problems. Finally, the fourth class is missing women. This class is the least prevalent of the model. All the individuals are women, mostly adults. They all have a substance addiction problem of some sort and have drug use problems. None of them, however, has a psychological disorder. None is known by the police and none has a criminal record. For 70% of these women, they were reported missing from a commercial or public place. So it is therefore possible to identify, following the analysis, 6 classes of missing person in order of prevalence, namely missing adult men, missing minors, missing from SGI, and ultimately missing adult women. In order to further clarify these profiles, the typology was crossed with various situational variables. Those variables appear on the left side of this table and provide more information on the situation surrounding the incident, as well as outcome variables. Only significant analysis will be presented. Activity at the time of disappearance. More than half of the repeated runaways, marginalized and criminalized men are on the move, leaving the last place they were seen before being declared missing. Missing men with no history and missing women were mostly doing an outdoor activity close to the last place they were seen. For the nature of the place of disappearance, this place is interior for repeated runaways and missing from SGI. For the variable presence of outcome, cases which are the least resolved or for which no information has been made public are mainly the cases of minor without history. For the missing from SGI, all cases have been resolved, as well as for the repeated runaways. Men without history and missing women are found but are lifeless at the time of discovery. The repeated runaways, as well as the missing from SGI, are almost all found alive. All missing from SGI are not a criminal disappearance, while the opposite is true for missing women. In conclusion, it is possible to believe that the lack of outcome would not necessarily be caused by the fact that the minors without history are never found, but also that the information is simply maybe just not released by the media when the minor is found. In this case, there is no way to know the outcome, which is why it would be useful to have access to some investigation files. Indeed, by knowing what type of disappearance is most likely to lead to a tragic outcome, such as the death of the missing person, it would be possible to prioritize these cases to some extent. For missing men and missing women, they are most likely to be found lifeless. These categories are the most at risk and should therefore be given priority since the outcome is worrying. Efforts must be concentrated in order to deploy police forces more quickly to increase the speed of response for these 2 subgroups which are at greater risk. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That was great. Thank you. Okay, let's take a look. And
am I still sharing my?
Yeah, I can. If you want, I can deactivate it.
Yeah, please. I don't
not
know
a problem.
Thank you.
There we go. Perfect. Okay, so Lorna and Wendy, do you want to pick it up?
Try to get comfortable here. See if I can share my screen. Can you see it?
Not yet.
Let me see. Can you see it coming up?
No, let me just make sure. No.
No.
Wendy, do you want me to share mine?
Yeah, hold on. I even lost my Zoom here.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you. Yep.
I don't know what happened. I'm so bad at this. Just give me 1 second. Should have my son here with me to help me.
Wendy, would it help if I started with mine and then give you some time to work on that?
I think Wendy just exited, so Lorna, is that cool?
I think that's fine. Yeah, if you want to go ahead, Sin.
All right. Hello, my name is Sin Kim. I'm part of the Canadian Society of Evidence-Based Policing in their Virtual Scholar Program. I'm also a detective with the Toronto Police Service. My partner in crime, you've already met, is Lorna Ferguson. She'll be speaking right after this. And we're doing a typologies of missing persons, specifically developing a situational typology based on risk of harm. Now, some background material. In Canada, around 2019, there were approximately 73,000 missing people. And to give you an idea, that's like one missing person for every 7 minutes. Included among these cases are, well, there are a lot of cases where people are located relatively quickly, but then there are many cases where there are negative outcomes related to serious injury and fatalities. These include cases of self-harm, suicide, accidental injury, wandering from dementia or Alzheimer's, and criminal victimization like abduction, even homicide. Now, the police are criticized for these negative outcomes, and one UK police review has associated these negative outcomes with police delays in initiating the investigation, delays in accurately assessing risk, and utilizing appropriate strategies at the initial stages of the investigation. The challenge in policing is that the police missing person responses or the strategies can be complex and extremely resource intensive. And what I mean by that is it can use up a lot of the personnel that is currently on duty using canvassing technology like drones, helicopters, dogs, boats, forensics, investigative techniques like interviewing and cell phone analysis and such. So the dilemma police face is how to employ the appropriate strategy and resources efficiently in order to continue responding to the priority emergency calls for service. What we're seeking is to develop a typology in order to gain insight into this complex problem. And through the process of grouping, what we're going to do is process grouping similar attributes together and identifying patterns, hopefully. A missing person typology can help formulate concepts that can hold utility to police in relation to risk assessment, prioritization, and resource allocation. Now, in our literature review, we found very few studies on missing person typologies, even less so in the North American context and none in the Canadian context. I'm actually glad that Justine is doing a typology one in Canada. And what we found is most of these typologies is based on data from the UK or from Australia, and a little bit on the one that has some US data. And in all these typologies, the focus is on the missing person's motivations and intents. And that could be problematic for categorization because it could be difficult to categorize when you're categorizing the intent because of other factors that confound these issues like alcohol use, drug use, how does intent get changed by trauma, cognitive impairment, and so forth. Now, because of that, we found, in some cases, we found a lack of mutual exclusivity, which means that certain situations could be categorized in multiple categories simultaneously. And some of the situations weren't able to be fit into the category, so there was a lack of comprehensibility. So what we wanted to do was build on the current scholarship, and instead of using intent, which closely looks like intent, what we're going to use is what the actual actions are of the people, of the missing person. So our method was we developed the initial typology, and we abstracted and developed it from individual experiences of police personnel in relation to their experiences in response to missing persons. And then our sample group will consist of closed missing person reports from one Canadian Municipal Police Service. We're going to include qualitative information such as event details and report synopsis from investigative files, and then conduct a thematic analysis where themes and sub-themes will reveal categories. And then we're going to use these categories to verify our initial typology, or we're going to abstract to further develop the initial typology. Now, while developing this initial typology, we started to look at what's the criteria for reporting someone missing. And at the first stage, we looked at the very least, the missing person has to be part of some type of formal and informal social network. And because if you're not part of a network, no one notices that you're missing. The second component that's necessary is there has to be an unexpected disappearance, and it has to be noticed by at least one of the members of the social network. But that's not enough, because what we need is the disappearance has to cause enough concern. So that's stage 3. And the reportee has to become concerned enough to report the absence. And usually when the concern comes, it's because they realize that the missing person has been disconnected in some way from their social network. Now, when it comes to identifying harm in a case and speaking to other officers, there's really 2 components that we're looking at. The first risk dimension is the circumstances of the disappearance. How is this person disconnected from their social network? The second dimension you look at is the individual characteristics. What is the person's individual vulnerability, and what happens to that when they get disconnected from that social network? And individual vulnerability is related to a person's ability to adapt to their environment by making informed, uncoerced decisions, avoid harm, and obtain resources in relation to personal safety. So these are, think of people who suffer from some kind of cognitive impairment, have mental illness, substance abuse, young children, people who are homeless. And coming back to the mode of disconnection from social network, it's in 3 broad categories. Either somebody has left their social network. The second component is someone's contact with their social network has been impeded in some way. And the third category is there has been no break in the social, in this disconnection, but what happens is there's a perceived. So this is like your miscommunication or mistakes where there's an accidental communication error when one person thought that they were going to meet somebody, but they didn't. And this is just a perceived break. Now we cross-reference these 2 areas. And when you cross-reference these 2 areas, we found that there were 5 main categories that could be made here based on people's individual vulnerability and their mode of disconnection. And if you notice, separation refers to the highest level of vulnerability, and departure is at the near mid to lower range. And at the very end is the misunderstanding, where there is some kind of communication error. So I'll start with explaining what these categories are. So in terms of when somebody has left their social network, the first one is departure. This is commonly, a lot of times people could talk about this in terms of like your runaways. They would be part of this departure. It's when somebody leaves without providing their whereabouts, even though they possess the means to provide a member of their social network their whereabouts. Then you got your disassociation. It's where you gradually disassociate contact with your social network. Generally, this is characterized by large gaps in time between contacts before somebody is reported as missing. So think of people who exhibit antisocial type behaviors, where sometimes with mental illness, sometimes with the homeless population, where contact gradually gets longer and longer until someone realizes and gets concerned that they haven't spoken to someone in some time. And the last part is separation. This is characterized by the people who require protection the most. These are people who require protection against their own vulnerability. People who usually require a caregiver. Think of people with Alzheimer's, people with dementia, very young children, some kind of cognitive impairment. And when they're separated from that caregiver, even people suicidal who are in psychiatric facilities, when they're separated from their caregiver by leaving custody, they need protection against their own vulnerability. Now, the second part is where their contact is impeded with the social network. So this is in 2 ways. We have the chance isolation, where there's a chance occurrence that isolates a person from their social network. So for example, someone can have a heart attack while in the woods. They could get lost. They could suffer some type of accident. And then what we call removal is when a third party is involved. So a perpetrator removes someone from the social network by exerting some illegal physical or psychological control. So that could be a homicide, that could be human trafficking, abduction, even parental abductions. Now, when we go back into the cross-referencing into this chart, you can see that and how it was set up in such a manner. Now, the missing person, our hope is that the missing person typology can help formulate concepts that can hold utility to the police in relation to response and preventative strategies. Our intended social benefits and the utility of this is mainly for police and social agencies. We want to improve officers' ability to accurately recognize and identify specific risks associated to a given situation. So perhaps this can be used as a guideline for officers to quickly assess the situation, break down the risk in terms of the specific situation, breaking the contact versus the vulnerability of the individual. Then we want this typology to act as a base for police prioritization tool, ensuring that the appropriate resources and strategies are utilized at the initial stages of investigation. For example, if I had a situation that involved someone who's separated from a caregiver, techniques such as search and rescue techniques would probably take precedence over investigative techniques. I would want my search and rescue experts rather than my detectives on that right at the beginning. And then we want to identify triggers and high-risk groups that can form the basis of preventative intervention strategies by policymakers. So as we break these up, maybe we'll see certain categories and we'll see triggers in that category on what precipitated that break in social contact. And once we see that break, maybe that will start the policy implications. That's it. Sorry, I had to go kind of fast, but thank you. And there's our contact information if should you need to contact us with any questions.
Thank you so much. We should have plenty of time at the end for questions, and you can like expand. Sin, like we only have 3 panelists for this session, so there should be plenty of time to discuss and talk. Because you already have 2 questions in the Q&A, by the way.
Oh, great.
All right, Wendy, Lorna, take it away.
All right, good afternoon. Can you hear me?
Perfect.
You can hear me?
Yes, loud
Okay.
and clear.
Okay, perfect. Well, good afternoon, and thank you for taking the time to attend our presentation today. With me on this presentation is Lorna, and Lorna has been my mentor for the past year since I was chosen for the Virtual Scholar Program. And I just want to point out that this program has been very insightful, and it has taught me a lot and pushed me well outside my comfort zone. So I will be presenting our article today on repeat or chronic, examining police data across classification types of missing person cases. This policy paper will examine 3 classification types of persons reported missing. This would be no previous history, repeat, or habitual and chronic. What we have seen is that there is no consistency when police officers and police organization classify a missing person in one of these 3 categories. The main issue being that with no formal definition and not a lot of research, individuals reported missing are not provided with these classifications, and then they can have implications on police risk assessment and response. So the focus of the article is how case management efforts by way of data accuracy and risk categories can impact repeat missing person cases. Therefore, to do this, data from missing person cases were extracted from 2 Canadian municipal police agencies' record management systems. Included in the cases were closed missing person reports from 2014 to 2019. So removing the duplicates from the cases, we had a total of 8,519 from one and 2,397 from another police agency. And when you remove the duplicates, we had 10,683 missing person reports. So to predict case classifications based on missing occurrences, case classifications were coded as no previous history, repeat, or habitual and chronic. Lorna, I think you have went forward a little too much. Next one. Yes, there we go. So the independent variable in this study, the number of previous missing person reports was included as categorical variable, which ranged from 0 to 20 reports. As we continue, the multi-nominal logistical model was used to estimate the case classifications. This was selected as a dependent variable in the analysis. This means the categories of the outcome variable are regarded as mutually exclusive and unordered. As it appears at first glance, the case classifications appear to be ordered in that they represent increasing levels of previous missing reports. So the assumption of ordered logistical regression was not met, as the proportional odds assumption was violated according to the Brandt test. So in essence, this model estimates concurrent logistical regressions for comparison among alternate categories. The formal test was required to determine whether the categories of the outcome variable, which is the case classifications, could be collapsed into fewer categories. And it was noted that this could not be done. As we move along, you can see the results that are illustrated in the table. On the far right is the total missing person cases from each category. I will elaborate on this a bit so the numbers kind of make sense. When looking at the results table, you will see that 10.9% of cases had no previous history of going missing in these data sets. This highlights that 89.1% of missing person cases are individuals who have gone missing multiple times. Those with 0 previous missing events that were classified as repeat or habitual and chronic, and those with 1 to 20 missing person events that were classified as no previous history, make up about 8.6% of all missing person records. This shows that at least 9% of missing person cases are misclassified, with these figures likely being higher. Most cases with no previous history of going missing are classified accurately, as 60.1% are marked as no previous history. This means that 39.9% of missing person reports are classified incorrectly by police as either repeat or habitual and chronic, or were not assigned a label at all. When we continue, if we look at after 10 previous missing events, an individual is mainly classified as either repeat or habitual and chronic. Turning to multiple missing person reports, most cases were marked as repeat if they have gone missing 1, 2, or 3 previous times. And a similar trend occurred for habitual and chronic files, wherein the highest categories in this case classifications were 2, 3, and 4 previous missing episodes. As we see in Table 1, the general trend that around 10 previous missing occurrences, the known data issues started to subside. So when we go to discuss our statistical analysis, we included only cases with 10 occurrences or left to be included. Cases in which it was identified that data was inaccurate or had missing values, they were extracted from the analysis. So that included a removal of 3,183 reports. So the final analysis was 4,430 closed missing person reports from 2014 to 2019. So when we look at this result table, this model estimates how multiple missing person cases should be classified. So what we see is that missing person cases classified as repeat are significantly more likely to have 1, 2, or 3 missing person reports. Those with 1 previous missing occurrence are over 3 times more likely to be classified as repeat compared to habitual and chronic. A missing individual has gone missing 2 times previously. They are just over 2 times more likely to be regarded as repeat missing persons. 3 previous missing reports also predicted about 2 times an increased likelihood of being documented as repeat. Cases in which there are 5 or more previous missing episodes are significantly less likely to be noted as repeat. As we continue, overall, to talk about this table here, the multi-nominal logistical model highlights a pattern of increased chances wherein missing person cases are more likely to be classified as repeat if they had 3 previous reports or less, and habitual and chronic if they had 4 previous missing occurrences or more. These clear distinctions point out that there is a great potential for clear definitions and standardizations across the case classification types. So our research offers 3 key contributions to the existing literature on missing persons. One more slide. The descriptive overview recognized several data quality issues concerning case classifications, highlighting potential validity issues regarding police missing person data. This may hold true as data quality is regarded as a typical problem in police research. In addition, statistical analysis by way of multi-nominal logistical regression highlight increased chances in case classifications across certain numbers of police missing episodes for each case type. This acts as a starting point for police to develop evidence-informed case classification measures to police to reduce confusion. This study responds to calls for the development of a formal definition for these 3 case classifications. Based on the estimations offered in this research, the findings lend support for the potential of repeat missing persons to be formally defined as cases involving 1 to 3 previous missing episodes, and habitual chronic cases to be regarded as those reports involving 4 or more disappearances. So in conclusion, this study can therefore act as a starting point for police to develop evidence-informed case classification measures to police and research to reduce confusion and frustration in what constitutes an individual as repeat versus habitual and chronic. Employing standardized measures for repeat and habitual and chronic risk categories allows for risk assessment to appropriately reflect the urgency and risk level of the case. Data accuracy can assist in ensuring that the already strained police resources that we all know are not stressed further, whereby greater resources are not allocated to, for example, a repeat missing person case that is really just their first time missing. In turn, this will enhance the utility of risk categories, reduce disconnect between their conception and use by police, and minimize storing and assigning risk classifications that are not of value. And just like all studies, there are limitations. So the limitations for this study is the data quality issues can hinder definitive conclusions on how case classifications should be formally defined. The conclusions offered in this study are generated from data supplied by only 2 police services in Canada, so it may not be reflective of the entire. And the study focused only on the number of previous missing episodes impacted case classifications of repeat and chronic missing persons and did not include any other control variables such as race, ethnicity, and social economic status. Thank you.
Thank you so much. This has been such a great opportunity to listen to all your really inspiring research. There are several questions in the Q&A, some for Wendy and Lorna, some for Justine and some for Sin. So take it away. If you want, I'll Sin, if you could ask answer the first question from Hannah Perry, please.
Sure. I don't see the questions, unfortunately. Oh, wait, there it is. Hannah Perry, there we go. Do you believe that the challenges in policing when it comes to missing person can lead to these cases becoming colder faster than they should be? Yeah, absolutely. I think if they're not, it depends on the type of missing person. So if, for example, let's say it's a criminal one, as time goes on, you have to assume that in a criminal case, the person is getting further away or covering their tracks more. If you have a situation where it is somebody with Alzheimer's, for example, if it's not quickly identified, and you got to remember in some cases, people walk especially with dementia, walk in straight lines. So the longer you take to mobilize, the further they get, which increases the surface area of identifying where they are. So yeah, I would have to agree with that, generally speaking.
And let's see, Sin, do you plan on putting your presentation on the portal? I'm sorry if I missed that.
Oh, yeah, if whoever wants it on the portal, sure, no problem.
I don't know, it's Anon.
Yeah.
Justine, you have a question. Is there a breakdown of the numbers in your study across provinces and territories? How did you select the 387 coded cases out of 7,000? You're on mute, love.
It's okay now. Okay. Well, we haven't looked at the breakdown yet, but we have collected this information and are planning on looking at it and mapping these cases. I checked real quick for a brief overview. We have about 55 cases for Eastern provinces, almost 100 for Western provinces. Quebec and Ontario would be 135 cases. And for Northern provinces, it would be 12 cases. And for the second question, we plan to code all the 7K cases, but are currently only at 387. These coded cases are randomly selected to be added to the database. So we counted like 20 cases, and then we code this one, and we went on and on like this.
Perfect, thank you. Wendy, you have a question in the Q&A regarding how you exercise the quality control of missing occurrences data.
Lorna is going to answer that one.
So in terms of exercising quality control, we did an initial descriptive analysis of the files.
Lorna, you're gonna, sorry, I don't mean to interrupt. You're gonna need to either, like, you're gonna need to go closer to the mic.
Can everyone hear me?
Perfect.
Okay, so in terms of exercising data quality control, we first did the descriptive analysis to do that, to see what the types of data issues were. So then we could use only those files that we could tell in which there were data issues with in the statistical analysis. We also ran 3 different formal tests to ensure that the models were reliable and stable, so that the data was kind of reflective of that. So descriptive analysis, any cases with missing values, known data issues. So a repeat case being classified as no previous history, or no previous history case being classified as habitual or chronic. And then we only included those cases which had been properly classified with what we do know currently in the statistical analysis. So I hope that answers the question. And then the second question, how to make that data better from your point of view as somebody working in the field. Well, I mean, partnering with researchers like Wendy and Sin have done, starting to generate research evidence across Canada, across Northern America, to begin to answer data issues. So developing formal definitions, developing clear ideas on what things should be classified as, and also educating police officers, services, and the public on the value of gathering data and imputing data into the record management systems in a uniformed or more consistent way.
Can you hear me? It's Wendy.
Great. Yes.
I just want to add, I have spoken to my senior management, like my high level officers in the RCMP, and they are very interested in this type of research. And we have meetings coming up when it's appropriate to discuss these papers and what we can do moving forward to incorporate these suggestions and changes throughout our organization.
Great, thank you. And you all have another question right after it too, about repeat and habitual chronic.
Yeah, so that was the point of the study, was to start developing an idea of what a repeat category is and a habitual / chronic category is. And we didn't go on the full scale of what the importance of that is, but if we can think about how someone that's labeled, let's say, as a chronic drug user is labeled and handled across different law enforcement agencies or in the criminal justice system, we can begin to understand why it's important, why we look at these categories. So let's say someone that has no previous history is classified as a chronic case. There are differences in how cases get handled. There are differences in perceptions, and there are differences in police response in terms of the risk assessment and the resources allocated. So the purpose of the paper and all the analysis we did was to begin to understand what a repeat case is and what a habitual / chronic case is. And basically a repeat case based on anecdotal experiences is someone that's gone missing a few times, but not enough to be perceived as chronic. And that's where we begin to see the issues with not having a formal definition, is because there's discretionary elements, there's subjectivity in terms of perceptions that can influence that. And then that seeps through into how police respond to these cases. So in our paper, we found that cases that had gone missing 3 or less times, 1, 2, or 3 times, were significantly more likely to be classified as repeat cases. And then chronic cases are those cases that have gone missing 4 or more times. So that's when we get to, or we begin to see the differences and the distinctions and how maybe we should begin to formally define them.
Great, thank you so much. There's just one more question, and Frank posed it. I'm just.
I answered that one.
Oh, sorry, my bad.
Yeah.
All right, well, thank you all so much for this really great panel. It was super informative, and it's been such a privilege to be able to host all of these panels. Thank you so much. Tabitha, I am going to close down and open it up in a jiffy just so that we can start a whole new recording. Thank you everyone who attended. This was awesome, and I really appreciate all of your hard work. Have a great day and a great weekend. Thank you all.
Thank you.